But then, Dr. Okiti, you should also remember that among these major players, we have the ones that you call medium to minor players. In the short term, this is not good news for them because of they have to source, will have no means of adjusting, for instance, to the variables at play, including inflation. What is the best way to cope in these times? What do you think will be the best way?
No, I actually, in a way, I slightly disagree because most of the players that you are referring to, if you recall, even before the Central Bank of Nigeria rightly floated the Naira, I think most of them have adjusted to that level of depreciation anyway. So I do not expect any shock to come from this, from the recent increases in the Naira rate. I think most of those increases have already passing through the system. Well, I hope I'm not wrong, but I think that is already reflected in the prices and in the inflation that we already see. Yes.
And then a lot of people are calling at this time for more stronger policy driving from the fiscal and the monetary authorities. What options, for instance, starting from the fiscal authority, should they be looking at? Are there any options available to them?
On the fiscal side, I think there are a variety of options. It could be reforms. They could try and sell assets. They could try and, reforms and selling of assets. those are the two broad options available to them. I think on the monetary side, I do not think there are many options left. And next week, when they hold the MPC, we will see what else can be done. I think everything on the monetary side has already been done. They floated the Naira. They're very, very careful in terms of the rate. I think everything that needs to be done on the monetary side has been done. On the fiscal side, you have to improve investment. You have to attract investment. You have to be prudent. You have to try and reduce deficit as much as possible, and at the same time attracting investment. So there are a lot of options that are still available on the fiscal side, and I hope very soon we begin to see some of those options happening.
Well, for the monetary side, a lot of people are expecting that the Monetary Policy Committee, when they do meet next week, will do nothing with regards interest rate. They will hold interest rates where we have it at the moment. But then it's a very dicey situation right now for the Monetary Policy Committee because they're looking at ensuring that the economy grows and also ensuring that they keep in check most of those macroeconomic variables that actually drive the economy. So which should be their primary focus as they have their meeting next week?
Well, I don't know which will be the primary focus, but I think there will be three considerations. I think the first thing would be that they will take into consideration the fact that the June inflation, the rate of the pace of growth of the June inflation over the May inflation is the lowest that we have seen this year. I think that is one thing they will take into consideration. The second thing they will take into consideration is that most of the factors that has driven the inflation rate in the last 6 months are largely structural, and they will take into consideration that those structural changes are already working their way through the system, and if there are no further shocks, so inflation should stabilize or revert to what I can call the average of the last 1 year before the end of the year. So they will take that into consideration. The third thing they will take into consideration is the poor economic growth. The data for second quarter is not out yet, but many people expect that we would have entered recession. So they will also take that into consideration. So how they balance all these forces and determine what rate should be next week, I am not sure. But you are right in saying that it is a very, very difficult time to actually set the benchmark rate. It's difficult for monetary policy because you have inflation going up on one side, albeit at the moment at a very slower pace, and then you have poor economic growth, and worse still, you have a very, very weak economic outlook. So it's very, very difficult to see how they balance it next week.
So My next question is going to be, Dr. Okite, what can be done or who should be driving the stimulation of this economy that is in a contractory stage?
Fiscal. The fiscal side has to drive this. There is monetary policy by its nature have very, very limited options, and they are short-term in nature and also short-term in nature. But going forward, it definitely has to be fiscal. I said last week, we have seen some reforms, but we are not seeing reforms quickly enough, and we are not seeing them in greater detail. I mean, at a much faster pace. So it's definitely fiscal. We want to hear what is happening regarding the direction of economic policy for each sector, what is happening maybe to oil and gas, what is happening to transport, what is happening to infrastructure. You know, there has to be some kind of direction and momentum on these sectors. And I think until we begin to see that, many people will begin to second guess. Many people will always second guess, and much of the load will now be left to monetary policy to deal with. But by its nature, monetary policy only respond to economic conditions. So we should not expect much from that. We need much more direction from the fiscal side going forward.
Right, so going forward and in the short term, there really isn't any silver bullet?
No, there is not. There is not. This is something that we have to take a long-term view of. And I think that is very, very important. It's very, very important that we are careful with our expectations. It's a long-term view that we need to take at the moment. There's no the only thing that is probably short-term, and that's not even something that can happen within months, is if you begin to sell assets, you know. But even if you're going to do that, it's going to take a minimum of 6 months or even 1 year for you to actually reap the benefits. So in the short term, there's nothing much anyone can do. But in the long term also, the work for the long term needs to start now. And I think that is the key message here.
Dr. Okite, thank you so much for your perspectives this morning.